Hello, hello. Hi, everybody. Everyone very punctual.
I like what.
Hi, guys.
Hello.
Hello.
Rabbi,
Well-
where are you tonight?
What'd you say?
Hi, Marilyn.
You ever watch?
Whoa.
You ever watch The Good Place?
Linda, we can't see you.
Oh, what am
I
I doing?
highly
wrong?
recommend it if you have Netflix or whatever
Yeah.
it is.
What's it called? The Good Place?
Yeah,
If they want.
The Good Place.
The Good Place. I
Have you
haven't
seen-
actually seen the
I can't.
fourth and final season, but it is a really wonderfully funny, quirky show that delves into philosophy and religion.
Okay.
You know, Ted Danson's in it. I'm
Hard to do.
blanking on the name of the female lead. You know, she did Kristen Bell, who did Frozen and a few other things. But it's a it's a delightfully binge-worthy kind of show, and now on Netflix. It's just
Okay.
really fun and very intellectual as well in its way. You know.
Here we are.
Hi, Linda.
Hello,
Hi,
hello,
Marty.
hello.
A Good Place. Okay.
Yeah, The Good
Hi,
Place.
Linda. Hi, Marty.
Rabbi, when do you have time to watch it?
Oh, I don't anymore. You kidding me? I don't have much last season. Because I haven't even had time to think about it yet. But I'm trying to avoid all spoilers.
Rabbi, I have you also. That's Bob Mansfeld.
Hi, Bob. How you doing? I see you. Yes. How are you?
I've been looking forward to listening to you.
Oh, really glad to have you here. I see Linda and Linda. Double my Lindas, double my fun. I see Bernie and Marilyn here, and then Marilyn Warner. I see everybody here. It's really good.
Hello.
And I think I have someone else here. Robin's here. Jan. Jan's coming on.
Well,
Debbie Siegel's coming on.
Hi, Robin.
Robin's on mute.
Hi.
There you go.
I'm here.
I'm late a little.
Hi, Jan.
taxes, because it changes everything. We just got in the mail. So,
Hi, Jan. Hi, Debbie.
Hi, Marilyn.
Hi.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Rabbi. Hi, Tyler.
There's something coming on. I can't really see who that is yet. Oh, that's okay. It's the bylaws. I think.
inventory.
What's your number? What's your name?
Yeah. Okay, I think I'm on twice. Okay. Cool. Okay.
Yeah, but
Give me 1 second. We're gonna get going. Okay. So today is our part 2 on the study of Ruth. We did part 1 last week. And it was a really, I thought, a fascinating read of the story, which is, again, not as commonly known. Because usually people read the first chapter. I had mentioned, that part of wherever you go, I will go, that Ruth says to Naomi, and they sort of go off on their merry way, and nobody reads the other 3 chapters of the story, which I think are actually probably the most important out of the bunch. So we spoke about how this story where Ruth doesn't leave her mother-in-law, Ruth goes with her mother-in-law to, follow her on her journey, even though, according to societal rules, that Ruth has no further obligation to Naomi. Her husband, Naomi's son has passed on, and she is now free to do whatever she wants, but she stays with her mother-in-law in an act of chesed, right? An act of kindness that goes above and beyond what the norm would be. And so we spoke about how the book of Ruth can be read as a morality play about the idea of chesed, about the idea of kindness, compassion, and mercy. We also spoke about the idea of how this book can be read as an homage to King David. You know, that this is his lineage, you know, of King David, because according to tradition and according to the book itself, Ruth is David's, you know, grandmother or great grandmother, a couple generations, you know, and you get King David from the relationship between Ruth and her husband, who is also a kinsman of Naomi, Boaz. So chapters 2 and 3 detail the courtship, you know, of Boaz and Ruth, and then in the last chapter, the penultimate chapter, they get married. And when the other kinsmen cannot redeem, so Ruth and Naomi and Ruth and Boaz get married, and it says they have a son, Mazel Tov, and good times for everybody, and everyone's thrilled, and it's a nice, happy ending, or so we would think. And so we're going to reread the last part of it today as we dive into the story, because I want to sort of dive into how this story can be read using what I like to call intertextuality, meaning that there are some portions of the Bible that relate to other portions of the Bible. And so when this book, Ruth, is written, for me, and I think about this with other books as well, it has to be written within a certain context. You know, it doesn't come out of nowhere. The author, just again, any author right now, when they write something, they're responding to something. They're thinking about something. You know, it's not just, you know, for fun. There's usually some kind of meaning behind any great work, right? It's not just, you know, words on a page. It's a greater context to what's being written. So we're going to look at that today and see what might be the hidden messages of this story that might make it have a completely different message than the one I just mentioned about chesed, about kindness, or just as an homage, right, as a tribute, an origin story to King David. Because King David, of course, is so great. We want to know who his parents are, who his grandparents are, what's the lineage of King David, because not only about King David, it's about the messianic lineage, right? Because King David, according to tradition, it's going to be his descendant that is going to become the Messiah, who's going to lead the Jewish people out of exile and into redemption and usher in this time of prosperity and peace. And so what we're going to do is, as a refresher, because we did finish the story last week, as a refresher, we're going to read the last couple of paragraphs of the story of Ruth, and then we're going to dive into some of the thorny and complex issues, because those are the fun ones, in my opinion. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen in just a moment here, and we can dive into the story. We're going to say our blessing. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Beautiful. So what we're going to do is, as I mentioned, we're going to read the last part of the story again, and then we're going to dive into some of the fun stuff. Melissa. Hi, Melissa. Would you like to jump in with and Boaz?
Sure. And Boaz said to the elders and to the rest of the people, "You are witnesses today that I am acquiring from Naomi all that belonged to Elimelech and all that belonged to Kilion and Mahlon. I am also acquiring Ruth the Moabite, the wife of Mahlon, as my wife, so as to perpetuate the name of the deceased upon his estate, that the name of the deceased may not disappear from among his kinsmen and from the gate of his hometown. You are witnesses today."
Thank you very much. Okay, Sapersteins, you want to give a read?
All the people at the gate and the elders answered, "We are. May the Eternal make the woman who is coming into your house like Rachel and Leah, both of whom built up the house of Israel. Prosper in Ephraim, and perpetuate your name in Bethlehem. And may your house be like the house of Perez, where Tamar bore to Judah through the offspring which the Eternal will give you by this young woman."
Excellent. So those are the two paragraphs that are really relevant to our conversation today. First, we have Boaz, serving as the redeeming kinsman, and saying he's not going to marry Ruth, Mazel Tov, and everyone's thrilled for them. Okay, everyone's so happy. And then there's this prayer here. May the Eternal make this woman, or make the woman coming into your house like Rachel and Leah. And then we're going to have this other reference to Perez, whom Tamar bore to Judah. So we have those two references. Why? Why those two references become the question that I'd like to put forward today. So Rachel and Leah, we know who they are, right?
Matriarchs.
Okay, and so what's their big role in terms of at least the perpetuation, right, of the Jewish people?
They're the mothers of the 10 tribes.
Yeah, they're the mothers of all the tribes, all the 12 tribes, right? Them and their handmaidens who are left out here. But, you know, that Rachel and Leah and their handmaidens are the ones who birth all the sons and a daughter, but all the sons who become the tribes of Israel, except for Joseph, who gets split into two, Ephraim and Manasseh, so it's Joseph's children. But again, they're the line, right? You know, they're multiple, they're plenty of kids. So that makes sense, right? You know, that's a positive spin. And Tamar and Judah, you know, bearing their son Perez. Who are these folks?
Well, Judah's whom the Jews are named after.
Indeed, he is from whom the Jews are named after. He is one of the sons, right, of Jacob, one of the, you know, and Judah, where we get Judaism, as you said. You know, Judah, a very important figure in the Jewish tradition. And so we have him mentioned and his offspring as well. Okay, that's all very well and good. So now we're going to fast forward a little bit. We saw this already. You know, they got married. They have a kid. Mazel tov all around once again. Naomi then takes the child, right? And Naomi starts lactating, according to tradition, and she winds up really nursing the child. And the people are saying, a son is born to Naomi. They're sort of moving Ruth a little bit out of the equation. And then they'll name him Obed, the father of Jesse, the father of David. And then we get back to our friend Perez again, okay? So Perez, who we had a little earlier, is the son of Judah and Tamar. And Perez begot Hezron, begot Ram, etc., all the way down through. Nachshon's in there, Salmon, and got Boaz. So Boaz begets Obed, Obed gets Jesse, Jesse gets David, all the way through. So Boaz is from the line of Perez. And so they're going all the way back. So that's why maybe they mention him, right? Because he'd be like the line of Perez. And then, so they has that connection to him. That's one way of looking at it. That's why those names are mentioned. Because we have hold on, I'm gonna do a little muting here because we're getting some feedback, and I'm not really sure where it's coming from, but I'm going to do a little bit of muting for now. And so we'll see how that goes. So yeah, and so we have these, you know, these names here.
Can I ask a question?
Sure, please.
Hear me? Oh, you can't hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
So that's exactly, I think that's exactly 10 generations. There's a lot. Is there some significance of 10 generations? Because it seems to happen a lot.
10's a nice number, you know. I mean, I'm fond of saying that any number in Judaism can be made a magic number. You know, and 10, I'm trying to think, aside from 10 commandments, obviously, being something pretty important, you know, I'm sure there might be other interpretations of why 10 is so important. It's certainly a nice round number. It's certainly a number that has a lot of power to it. Even today, top 10 lists, you know, it's not the top 11, it's the top 9. There's a comfort in 10s. It's part of the numeric system, obviously. So I aside from 10 commandments, I don't have in my head the Jewish connection to why 10, but I just know 10 is a very satisfying number for a lot of reasons. That's a really good question. Okay, and so that's the story of Ruth. Rachel and Leah have something else that's important about them that I think adds some context to the story, which we're going to see in Leviticus 18:18. So Leviticus 18:18. So Leviticus 19, going ahead a little further, contains one of the most important parts of the Bible, of the Torah. It's the holiness code. It's where we get Kiddushim Tihiyu, you shall be holy, for I, your God, am holy, and all of these great ethical and moral laws, including love your neighbor, as yourself, a lot of very important ethical laws. right before that, in Achrei Mot, we get other laws involving some R-rated activities, based talking about sexual immorality, who you can and who you cannot sleep with. And so Leviticus 18:18 has a little nugget that might be important for those of us who think back to our patriarchs and matriarchs. 18:18 says, "Do not marry a woman as a rival to her sister." Whoops. You can't marry sisters. So here we have Jacob, who is, again, very important for us as a patriarch and the father, so to speak, of all of these tribes. And with Leah and Rachel being the mothers, the marriage in itself is a problem. Now, one can, of course, argue, Leviticus comes later. They didn't know it yet. Sure. But the Bible here is making a point. Not a good idea to marry sisters. It's not a good deal. And that's, I think, pretty self-explanatory. We don't have to really delve into that too far. We can understand it's probably not a good idea to marry more than one wife to begin with. And since the year 1000 CE, at least in the Ashkenazic tradition, polygamy has been outlawed. Sephardic took a little bit longer time to do it, but the Ashkenazic at least banned it in the year 1000 CE. The reason I remember it is because the takana, the ruling, the legislation, was said to last 1,000 years. And so in 1999, there was a further discussion on whether or not Jews could have more than one wife before the year 2000, because the takana was about to expire. So you had to have the rabbis come together again, and they extended it another 1,000 years. So in 2999, we'll have this discussion again. I don't think it's going to be our problem. So at that point.
Brothers can marry brothers, right?
What?
Brothers can marry brothers. If a brother dies,
brothers in what way?
well, if a man dies, his brother can marry his wife.
Yeah, but that's levirate marriage. That we discussed a little bit last time. But that's brothers marrying their the widow. The widow. Yes. Yeah, brothers can marry or in fact, not only can, they're obligated to marry their brother's widow, which is where we get into this whole story. And that's actually going to be a good jumping off point for our next story that we're going to have, because we're going to talk about the origins of levirate marriage. And that's going to go into our story of the other people we mentioned, right? So we had this guy Perez, is mentioned, right? And Perez is the son of Judah, son of Jacob, and Tamar. Okay, well, who's Tamar? And who's Judah in this story? So this narrative actually interrupts, it breaks up the story of Joseph. So Joseph's going down to Egypt, he's going to rise up in the ranks. We sort of know that story. This story comes in the middle of the narrative. So we stop the Joseph story for a minute or two to tell this other story about Judah, one of Joseph's brothers. And so that's sort of the context of the story. And so that's sort of where we are in biblical history now. We're in the middle of the Joseph story. Joseph's already in Egypt. They've sold him to slavery, so that's where he is. And now we get an act break, and we get a tangent. We get a tale here about Judah. And so we're going to read this story in full, and we're going to then see how this story then relates to the story of Ruth. Okay, Linda Bilo, you want to give that a read?
About that time, Judah left his brothers and camped near a certain Edolamite, whose name was Hira. There Judah saw the daughter of a certain Canaanite, whose name was Shua, and he married her and cohabitated with her. She conceived and bore a son, and he named him Er. She conceived again and bore a son, and named him Onan. Once again she bore a son, and named him Shelah.
Okay, very nice. Thank you. And so Judah meets this woman, they get together, and they get married, and they have 3 boys. Okay, we got Er, Onan, and Shelah. Okay, so very nice. That's a good start. Jan, you want to pick up there?
Judah got a wife for Er, his firstborn. Her name was Tamar. But Er, Judah's firstborn, was displeasing to the Eternal, and the Eternal took his life. Then Judah said to Onan, join with your brother's wife, and your duty by her as brother-in-law, and provide offspring for your brother. But Onan, knowing that the seed would not count as his, let it go to waste wherever he joined with his brother wife.
Whoa.
So not to provide, I guess he was Catholic.
Told you we're going to get a little R-rated today.
So as not to provide offspring for his brother. What he did was displeasing to the Eternal, and he took his life also.
Okay.
To the daughter.
Finish up. Go ahead, Jan.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, what he did was displeasing the Eternal. He took his life also. Then Judah said to his daughter-in-law Tamar, stay as a widow in your father's house until my son Shelah grows up. For he thought, he too might die like his brothers. So Tamar went to live in her father's house.
Okay. So, behold the wonders of levirate marriage. So, the oldest gets married, and he marries Tamar, but it doesn't end well for Er. Er dies. He did something bad. We don't know what. Doesn't tell us. Doesn't matter. He dies. He was displeasing to God. That's it. So, according to levirate marriage, the brother would then marry Tamar. So Onan does his the first part of his duty, so to speak. He gets married, but because according to levirate marriage, the firstborn of the marriage of the offspring is accounted to the deceased, right? And so it would be considered Er's son, not his son. And so Onan decides he's going to take measures to not have a child. Let's put it that way. And so he does not, he does whatever he's doing here. His seed is going to waste, whatever you want to put it. So that didn't help because God didn't like that either. And it's not the act of not completing the coitus. It's the fact that, he is not doing his duty as principles of levirate marriage, right? And so he is then killed off because he's not doing his job. As a lever, as the one to marry his brother's widow. He's not doing the job, not providing with offspring, did the wrong thing. He's dead. Lovely. So now we're up to the third kid. We're up to Tamar. Not Tamar, we're up to Shelah. And so Judah looks at Tamar and goes, you know what? How about you go to your father's house? Shelah's not old enough to be married yet. You give it a little while. And then come and marry him. But what Judah's really thinking is, I'm not letting my kid marry this woman. She's killed 2 of my kids already. I'm not
A black widow.
Black widow. I'm not an idiot here. Something's obviously wrong with this woman. I'm not letting this happen. And so now Judah is engaged in deception, right? So he is not doing what he's supposed to be doing, giving his third son, Shelah, to Tamar. Right, in terms of levirate marriage, he is doing the wrong thing, even though one can understand, his point, right? Not to be too hard on Judah. One can understand where he's coming from at this point. He's seen 2 of his other sons die. He's not in a hurry to marry the third one to Tamar. Okay, it's a nice.
Hey, we don't want to just leave Onan without talking about him a little bit, right? I mean, that's what that comes. He's infamous in history, right? I mean, sexual practices is they point back at Onan, right?
Yeah, well, it was mistakenly, because that's exactly right. So onanism is another word for masturbation, but it's not really clear from the story that's what we're talking about. Because here, I don't think it's masturbation; it's he's pulling out. It's coitus interruptus is what we're talking about here, right? And so. He's just not, again, completing the act internally, so to speak. And so here is not doing that. So it's actually a misnomer. So Onan gets, his name attached to something else when it really should be a different act that his name is attached to. So
it's sinful in the sense that if you're supposed to be reproductive and don't do it, then I guess the Catholics and maybe the Orthodox Jews will see Onan as bad for that purpose, entirely apart from the question of masturbation, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, the issue is, again, it's one can see it as a controversion of be fruitful and multiply, but really what I think it is, again, it's less about the act itself than it is about what the act symbolizes, which is a rejection of the concept of levirate marriage. He's not doing what his duty is. He's not doing what he's supposed to do, which is to impregnate Tamar and to have a child by her that's going to carry on his brother's name and estate and holdings. And so I think it's that's Onan's sin. It's not the actual act itself in a different context. In this context, it's a greater sin because he's not doing his religious and moral obligation as far out as it might be for our purposes. But at that time, that's what he was supposed to be doing. He was defying God's will in a way by not cohabiting with his sister-in-law here and having a child by her, or getting her with child. So the Catholics read it a different way, obviously, just for the act itself, but I think that's a misreading of the text. And Shmuley Boteach, author of Kosher Sex, would back me up with that too. Not that I would give a lot of credence to Shmuley's opinions. With that being said, he can back me up on it. Okay, so now we're back to the story here. So Tamar agrees, goes to live in her father's house, thinking that eventually she's going to have the happy ending and marry the third son to marry Shelah. David, you want to pick up there? A long time afterwards?
Long time afterwards, Shua's daughter, the wife of Judah, died. When his period of mourning was over, Judah went up to Timnah to his sheep shearers together with his friend Hira the Adullamite. And Tamar was told, your father-in-law is coming up to Timnah for the sheep shearing. So she took off her widow's garb, covered her face with a veil, and wrapping herself up, sat down at the entrance to Enaim, which is on the road to Timnah, for she saw that Shelah was grown up, yet she had not been given to him as wife.
Okay, so we have a lot there. So Judah, his wife passes. Okay, so now he's a bachelor again. And his friend goes to him and says, hey, time of mourning is over. Let's go to Timnah to go to the sheep shearing festival. Doesn't sound like a lot of fun, necessarily, a sheep shearing festival. I don't think that sounds like, rock and roll and whatever. At these festivals, there was more than sheep shearing that goes on at them, okay? It's sort of a big carnival, sort of big bacchanal kind of activity. And there are a lot of activities that are happening at this festival, let's put it that way. And Tamar knows about this. And Tamar, the light bulb has gone off already. She's like, you know what? I see what's happening here. I'm not getting the son. I'm not getting Shelah. And so this is a problem. I'm going to go and see what I can do about this. And so she takes off her own widow's garb and costumes herself differently, and then goes down to the entrance to Enaim. Enaim. Anyone have some modern Hebrew and knows what Enaim are? Your eyes. Your eyes. So ayin, Enaim. One eye, ayin, two eyes, Enaim. So she's sitting down at Enaim, the place of vision. So she's sitting there just on the road, okay? And so now we're going to get into some more of the good stuff over here. Leah, you want to pick up?
Sure. When Judah saw her, he took her for a harlot, for she had covered her face. So he turned aside to her by the road and said, here, let me sleep with you. For he did not know that she was his daughter-in-law. What? She asked. Will you pay for sleeping with me? He replied, I will send a kid from my flock. But she said, you must leave a pledge until you have sent it. And he said, what pledge shall I give you? She replied, your seal and cord and the staff which you carry. So he gave them to her and slept with her, and she conceived by him. Then she went on her way. She took off her veil and again put on her widow's garb.
Thank you very much. And so Judah, down to the old sheep shearing festival, just like with Ruth, by the way, when we had the threshing floor, the sheep shearing is again, perhaps a little euphemistic. And so once again, we're sort of at this place. And so he sees her at the place of vision, Einayim, he sees her. And they have a little bit of a give and take here because, she has dolled herself up in a prostitute's garb. And so he, doesn't recognize her. And they have a little negotiation here. Ever the gentleman, Judah says, hey, I'll give you a kid from my flock, later on, and so she's not buying that, because, hey, we're here now. I'm not going to trust you to pay me. You got to give me something else. And so she takes his seal and cord and staff, items of identity, right? That everyone had a different one. And so these are family heirlooms. These are family traditions. These are your seals, your signs, your sigils, however you want to put it. And so they're definitely his belongings. So he can't, he'll need to get them back, right, later. So it's a good thing to have, because that way she can guarantee that she'll get payment later. So they go to bed together. Mazel tov, and unbeknownst to him, very important, she conceives, during this encounter, and then she leaves, and she gets redressed again in her widow's garb, and he goes home, and she has still his stuff. Okay, so
What is she thinking? I mean, does she want to inherit all his stuff? I mean, what in the heck?
yeah, she is, her motivation seems to be, well, you didn't give me your son, even though that's what's owed, and who's the next redeeming kinsman? Who's the next in line, maybe in her thinking. So she goes to the font, so to speak, of the three kids. So that could be what she's thinking. It could be just a game she's playing of revenge. It's difficult to get a sense of her motivations. But she's definitely, I think, here interested in seducing him to make him, honor a pledge that she is supposed to be part of the family. He sent her off, right? He tried to dispose of her. He said, go back to your father's house, and had no intention, right, of picking her up again when Shelah was of age. So I think that's what she's thinking, in this moment. Of course, we don't need Leviticus to tell us that this is also unkosher sex. This is not what you're allowed to be doing either. And so she's back in her widow's garb. And then Judah, ever the gentleman, wants to redeem, wants to make good on their evening together and the payment. Sandy, you want to pick up? You got to unmute yourself.
Well,
There you go.
Judah sent the kid by his friend, the Adulamite, to redeem the pledge from the woman, but he could not find her. He inquired of the people of that town, where is the cult prostitute, the one in Einayim by the road? But they said, there has been no prostitute here. So he returned to Judah and said, I could not find her. Moreover, the townspeople said, there has been no prostitute here. Judah said, let her keep them, lest we become a laughingstock. I did send her this kid, but you did not find her.
Okay, and so Judah, again, gentleman, he doesn't want to create an awkward encounter with her again after their little dalliance. So he sends his friend, says, hey, here are the Adulamite. Here, take this kid to this prostitute, and as payment, get my stuff back. But the Adulamite can't find her. And in fact, is told there is no prostitute there at all. There hasn't been one. So awkward once again. So this woman, whoever she is, because Judah doesn't know who she is, has his stuff. But he decides not to pursue it any further because this isn't a great story for him, of Judah. Judah realizes that if this story gets out, it's probably not the best thing for him. So he's just going to let it go at this point. He's not going to pursue the matter any further. Interesting to note about Einayim, again, going back to eyes, Judah cannot see. what's happening here, right? He does not have vision. He didn't know who it was when he was with Tamar, and he can't see, in the greater sense, the right thing to do, right? So it is as if his vision is obscured, while Tamar is the one wearing the veil, but can sort of see matters a little bit more clearly on what the right thing to do would have been. And so now Judah, again, is ready to let this matter rest. Okay, it happened, chalk it up to a bad experience and call it a night. So little does he know, the story takes another turn. Okay, Marilyn Warner, you want to give it a read?
Okay. About 3 months later, Judah was told, your daughter-in-law Tamar has played the harlot. In fact, she is with child by harlotry. Bring her out, said Judah, and let her be burned.
Very nice.
As she was being brought out, she sent this message to her father-in-law. I am with child by the man to whom these belong. And she added, examine these. Whose seal and cord and staff are these? Judah recognized them and said, she is more in the right than I, inasmuch as I did not give her to my son Shelah, but he was not intimate with her again.
Okay. Wonderful, right? And so Judah, of course, showed a lot of compassion when he finds out the situation in the beginning. 3 months, Tamar is obviously beginning to show. And since Tamar is not married, right, because that's what we're talking about here more than anything else, since she's not married and she's pregnant, obviously she's doing something on the side, and that's not great in Israelite society, biblical society. So they're going to kill her, and Judah showing not much really remorse or compassion here for his daughter-in-law, says, yeah, let's burn her. Okay. And
why did he not give her to his son Shelah?
Because the Black Widow issue, he was worried that because 2 of his other sons died or married to her, maybe something's wrong with the girl, maybe something's wrong with her. So that's why he didn't do it. And in defiance of, he gets this idea of levirate marriage. But then once he realizes, because again, Tamar was no sucker, she had the cord and the seal right from before as the pledge, so she was able to prove to him that he was in fact the one who slept with her and got her pregnant. So Tamar obviously now cannot be killed. Judah, realizes he had done the wrong thing and his part in the whole situation, and so they don't burn her, and so she is she's very conceived. She's allowed to continue on living here, but she does not get married to Judah. And they don't, they're not together again after that. Okay. And now our conclusion here. Bonnie, you want to pick that one up?
When the time came for her to give birth, there were twins in her womb. While she was in labor, one of them put out his hand, and the midwife tied a crimson thread on that hand to signify. This one came out first, but just then he drew back his hand and came out his brother. And she said, what a breach you have made for yourself. So he was named Perez. Afterward, his brother came out, on whose hand was the crimson thread, and he was named Zerah.
Very good. Thank you. So there's Perez. That's why we have in the Ruth story, right? So Perez is the direct ancestor of Boaz, who is the direct ancestor, the grandfather of King David. It is from this delightful story of sex and incest, where we get the story from Ruth. So seen now as a pair, right? The Rachel and Leah issue is a sexual sin in Israel. It's sexual immorality coming out of it. You're not allowed to marry sisters. Perez comes out of sexual immorality of the father sleeping with the daughter-in-law, which is also prohibited in Leviticus. So out of 2 things, that are mentioned here, both Abraham and Sarah aren't mentioned, Isaac and Rebecca aren't mentioned, Moses isn't mentioned, Miriam isn't mentioned. Only these 2 stories that both relate to some kind of Gilui Arayot, as we say Hebrew, some kind of a sexual immoral sin that sort of happened. Those are the two that are mentioned in the book of Ruth. Why? What's the author's point? What's the author trying to say by including both of those stories in? Because remember, this is not historical. This is a story that is created, right? So, and you remember I mentioned maybe it was created as a homage to King David. If you're King David reading this, it's not what you want to hear. That your grandfather is descended from this story here, right? This line of incest, right? That's not a really great homage. If you're going to create something to glorify someone, you would probably have a better story than this one. So what's the author trying to say?
Tamar was at least clever. Maybe it shows a certain amount of initiative and cleverness that she didn't just accept her fate.
It shows some cleverness. Certainly Tamar, has some ideas here, and is able to, through a little ingenuity, rightly or wrongly, create the situation for herself that's probably better than it was before. And Ruth certainly has some ingenuity to her as well. But there's one more thing, because unless we're not scandalized enough right now, there is one more thing to mention about our friend Ruth here. Ruth is from where?
Moabite.
Moabite. That's right. Ruth is a Moabite. And we had talked in the first week, right, about, I'm going to just quickly, sorry for the headache, we're going to stand back a minute here. And we talked about how, according to Deuteronomy, no Ammonite or Moabite shall be admitted into the congregation of the Eternal, right? And so Ruth's inclusion in this story as a Moabite is by its nature subversive, because Moabites are not allowed to be part of the Israelite community. And not only is a Moabite part of the Israelite community, she's David's grandmother. So on one side, we have a Moabite, right, who's not even supposed to be there. And on the other side, we have Boaz, a product of incest. And these are David's grandparents. Now, we have something a little bit more to play with, of course, because why not? Let's go back down here. Sorry for the fast forwarding. We have another story here, because you might ask yourself, rightly, who the heck are these Moabites? Where did they come from? Let's find out where they come from. Linda White. You want to tell us where they came from?
Okay. Lot went up from Zoar and settled in the hill country with his 2 daughters, for he was afraid to dwell in Zoar, and he and his 2 daughters lived in a cave. And the older one said to the younger, "Our father is old, and there is not a man on earth to consort with us in the way of all the world. Come, let us make our father drink wine, and let us lie with him. Then we may maintain life through our father." That night, they made their father drink wine, and the older one went in and lay with her father. He did not know when she lay down or when she rose.
You see what you have in Bible study? My goodness.
Wow, I knew that story.
My
My
goodness.
husband just left the room. He said, "What am I taking on Tuesday nights?"
Oh my God. So Lot, let's remember who Lot was, which I should mention beforehand. So Lot is Abraham's nephew, right? He's a relation to Abraham. He and Abraham have a little bit of a dispute over land, and so Lot goes one way, Abraham goes the other way, and Lot winds up in the beautiful hillside city of Sodom. And Lot is in Sodom and Gomorrah, and as he is in Sodom, things don't end well for that city, as we remember. And so his wife, who is not here anymore, and his daughters are rescued from Sodom. They flee, and they're told not to turn back because God is destroying the city, not to even glance back at what happened. So, of course, Lot's wife can't follow directions. She turns around, and she becomes a pillar of salt. And so Lot's wife goes bye-bye, exit stage left. So Lot is still there with his daughters. So this is right after that episode. Lot's on the run. He's still getting out of Dodge. And his daughters are there saying, hey, he's old. There's no more, his wife is gone, right? And it's just us. It's just the daughters. And so there's no one's going to carry on Lot's name afterwards because, his wife, their mother is gone. So they come up with this brilliant idea. Let's get him good and drunk and let's lay with him and see what happens, so to speak. Because they're on the run, they're living in a cave. They're like, oh, who's going to be with us? And so they develop this lovely plan to go, with their father. So the older one gets him good and drunk, and they have an evening together. And Lot's so hungover and drunk, he said what even happened. And so that's a lovely evening. Then the next evening, let's see here. Did I get everyone? Debbie, you want to give us a read?
The next day, starting from there.
Yep.
The next day, the older one said to the younger, see, I lay with father last night. Let us make him drink wine tonight also, and you go and lie with him, that we may maintain life through our father. That night also they made their father drink wine, and the younger one went and lay with him. He did not know when she lay down or when she rose. Thus the two daughters of Lot came to be with child by their father. The older one bore a son and named him Moab. He is the father of Moabites of today. And the younger one also bore a son, and she called him Ben-Ami. He is the father of the Ammonites today.
Very nice. So that's our story here of where we get Moabites and Ammonites from. Ben-Ami for the Ammonites. Ben-Ami means Ben is son, and Ami is my people. So he is literally the son of her people, the Moabites, because that's, what happens there. But Ruth gets, is a Moabite from Moab. Moab, what does Moab mean? How do we say daddy in Hebrew? How do you say dad in Hebrew or daddy?
Abba.
Abba, right? Abba and Ima. Okay, so Ab is father, and the Hebrew prefix mem, means from. So Moab literally means from dad.
Oh, wow.
From daddy. That's what she names her kid. Moab, from daddy. Indeed.
Didn't this the same thing would happen with Noah and his daughters?
Noah gets drunk, and his daughters, it's his sons actually, that uncover his nakedness, and it's unclear what that actually meant. But it's not, Noah's daughters, Noah doesn't have daughters, I believe. He just has sons. And so his sons do something to him that is unclear at best what happens there. But yes, it's a similar scenario that Noah got drunk and this happened. In the same way, Lot gets drunk and this happens. Okay, lovely. So now we have Ruth, the Moabite, whose entire people comes from incest once again, and Boaz, whose people come from incest once again, and they are King David's grandparents.
They were a bad lot.
They were a bad lot, I guess no pun intended with Lot here, but if they're so bad, why do they get to be not only King David's ancestors, but this is the messianic lineage, comes from this over here. So I go back to the question, what is the author trying to say in creating this kind of a text that can be read in this subversive way? Because I would argue the point is that, and maybe you agree, maybe you don't agree, but when we read those other two texts, the Judah and Tamar story, combined with the Rachel and Leah story, combined with this story, there seems to be a pattern that runs through this of mentioning characters whose dalliances, to put it nicely, are prohibited by Torah, prohibited by Jewish law, and prohibited by decent society. So the author, to me, when I read Ruth, I have to think that he was trying to think of something. He was trying to come up with something. So one way of looking at it first is that just by adding a Moabite, forget all this beautiful stuff that we just read, but just adding the Moabite in and of itself can be seen as a polemic against those who were anti-foreigner, against those who were negative towards other peoples, like the Moabites or the Ammonites, and it can be seen as a tale of inclusion in a way, saying, hey, you don't like the Moabites? You don't think they should be admitted into our society? I'm going to make a Moabite David's grandmother. How do you like them apples? Okay, so that could be one way of reading it. The other way of reading it, which includes now all this beautiful stuff that we just read, is that maybe it's satirical. Maybe it is in its way a polemic against those who take the Torah too seriously and too literally. That those who are really strict and rigid with the laws, here he's throwing all the laws out the window, not just any laws, but laws that are really, governing how we act towards each other in physical intimacy. He is taking these laws and saying, hey, I'm throwing them out the window for this story, that, maybe, he's trying to do something here. The author, I'm assuming, is a he, is why I'm using he, but it could be a she, who knows. Maybe what he's trying to do is to almost satirize biblical law in a way.
The way I looked at it was he was trying to delegitimize King David.
Yeah, trying to delegitimize him, but David's already there. Like David, by this time, David's been, so like that could be true, certainly. I mean, it could be a shot, right, at King David and the Davidic lineage in a way. Certainly, it can be seen that way. That maybe he, as opposed to an homage, maybe this is a shot across the bow. You think King David's so great, I'm going to make his relations in this unsavory light. Easily could be the case.
This business about the Moabites aren't going to get to the eternal, to the kingdom of heaven, or whatever, however it was said. Don't they kind of get around that with Ruth, because isn't she considered the first convert from somewhere else, from a Gentile to a Jew?
She is given that plaudit by rabbinic literature, and I think it goes further, in our day. Well, that's how we sort of view, Ruth. I would debate whether that was ever the author's intention, to make Ruth a convert. Ruth has the statement of wherever you go, I will go, your God will be my God, etc., etc. But Ruth throughout the text is referred to as Ruth the Moabite. She's never referred to as Ruth the Israelite, Ruth the Ger Tzedek, Ruth the convert. And I think the end of the story is actually fairly pointed, in that direction, when the first thing that happens when she has a kid is that it's basically taken from her arms and given to Naomi, who is the Israelite, and Naomi becomes the foster mother. And so they're trying to create an Israelite legitimacy to the offspring, but less of Ruth. And so Ruth certainly gets, again, those credentials later in rabbinic literature, and as it moves forward to today, where Ruth is seen as the first convert. I'm just not sure the author intended it that way.
Much earlier.
I would love to see this family tree.
Yeah. This is the family tree, right? And as a note, most of these people here are not known characters, except for our friend Nachshon's back. Nachshon ben Aminadav, Nachshon, the one who, according to Midrashic tradition, marries Miriam. And he's the one who walks into the Red Sea during the time of the splitting of the sea. He walks in first, and the water's up to his nose before the sea splits. And so this act of faith is what traditionally is thought of that actually splits the sea, is Nachshon's faith in God's deliverance. And so Nachshon and the Red Sea, that doesn't get protected from the story either, because he's part of this whole Mishagas. You know, that
I'm
happens.
thinking something, this doesn't add up if they have 10 generations. If they spend 400 years in Egypt, that doesn't quite work. You know,
I've never done the math, don't get me wrong.
No, but you're tracing Judah to David through 10 generations, because some of them lived 900 years. Maybe that would explain it. But
well, Judah's not here. Judah's going down here. Yeah, it's Perez, right? So Perez. You know, you're right. It's around Judah's time, right? And so, yeah, you're right.
Doesn't add up.
No, I think the math in itself is dubious, but again, I don't know if that's the author's point, is worrying with the math so much. But you're right. I don't think the math adds up pretty well.
I mean, one of the things that I wondered about was, could the writer, I guess we don't know who the writer was, but could there be something about that that a man or a woman, for that matter, in our day, is a person of his or her own, that he or she could be great, even coming from another lineage, or things like that, like coming out of such, weird circumstances, that David's greatness really didn't rely on his being from somebody else, but that was part of who he was.
Yeah, I think that I think that can be part of the author's intent, saying, look, maybe parents, grandparents don't matter, and we're all our own person, and even you can have something so beyond the pale. Remember, I'm assuming that this is a shocking revelation, in this situation. So if we're shocked about this Davidic lineage, in this story, imagine how they felt reading this thing, And so I think they would look at this and go, "Oh my God, what's this person trying to do?" And maybe that is part of it, saying that no matter who your parents or grandparents are, you can still aspire to greatness. But it is such a theological quandary to basically say that the chosen king of Israel, right? The one who all kings of Judah are from the line of David and Solomon, and the messianic line, the Messiah is going to come from this line, all springs from incest. I mean, that's a pretty big punch in the face, to those who would interpret the Torah and the scriptures literally. He's saying, hey, maybe it's not so important to your parents and grandparents, which is, by the way, in itself, forget that other stuff, but even the idea that your parents and grandparents, maybe don't have as much yichus, that's in itself revolutionary, right, in its way, because to this day, what do we do on Friday night, and when we pray? We literally have a prayer called Avot V'Imahot, fathers and mothers, where we call back to our ancestors. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, right? And so our parents do matter, right? Our, not that it determines our fate, but certainly, family matters, so to speak, in Jewish tradition.
I'm thinking, everything that we've just read about Ruth, does any of this have any bearing on today's Orthodox, where you're not supposed to marry your first cousin because there could be birth defects or mental problems if you marry your first cousin?
I think that's more science, at that point. But in the Levitical rules sort of lay down who you can and can't marry, and then they might have extended it a little bit as well. But the idea was, in the Orthodox and the ultra-Orthodox community do have more problems with birth defects, because it's all very closely related, so to speak. So they have more incidences of Tay-Sachs and of Gaucher and of the rest of them, because there's not a lot of mixing in the line. It's all Eastern European, from the same shtetl. And so I don't know, but I think that reading it positively, I like Sandy's sort of reading of it, and the idea that like there's something to be said about um, making one's own way in the world, right? And that someone from humble, you see, that's the whole thing. It's not even humble origins, right? I mean, that's what we could think about is
Yeah, just
humble
totally
origins.
dysfunctional, really.
Yeah, but someone from humble origins can aspire to and become great. I think it's a really nice reading, of this text, and the idea that that your parents and grandparents don't determine your destiny. You can still do something great. It's a very progressive idea. And again, I wonder why. Yeah, the author's intention here. I think it's fascinating because it's such an interesting text in and of itself. And then you add this extra layer onto it. I don't know what to do with it at the end of the day. Like the author, I think to me was really trying to create something that would be shocking, whether it was just the inclusion of Ruth as a Moabite into the Holy Family, so to speak. That in itself was shocking. And then when you sort of peel back the layers of the onion, it doesn't get better. And just very specifically mentioning Perez, who never gets mentioned anywhere in the Bible except for this book, and the actual story, in Genesis. And obviously Rachel and Leah, it's almost like he's leaving breadcrumbs for us to follow back into the text. And I think it does, speak to the idea of, maybe we don't have to take everything so seriously because even our King David could be the spawn of less than beautiful circumstances.
Was
Maybe.
David so pure?
No, none of them are, which is part of the fun. But because I mean, David in himself, has some forays into that world of perhaps having not the best sexual ethics, to say the least. And Solomon after him follows in his father's footsteps, so to speak. A lot there. It's very interesting, but everything is fine. It all works out for the best. So that's why, again, I love reading Ruth. Because, again, as I say, it's much more than wherever you go, I shall go. There's a lot more to that story. But it is, again, as I'm fond of saying, with any great literature, it's the fact that it's multi-layered. It can be read in so many different ways. I think there's so many ways of reading this story and interpreting it, which is what makes it, I think, fun. If there's just all these different ways of playing with it, whether it's as a morality tale, as an homage to King David, as a slap to King David, as a slap to the idea of those who railed against intermarriage, those who railed against this idea of like purity, in relationships, and or those who railed against maybe having a very strict and narrow interpretation of the Torah. So I don't know. There's a lot of ways to read it, and I think they can all be very illuminating in their own ways.
But Rabbi, how do you teach this to kids? Just out of curiosity.
I do the opposite of what I said to you in the beginning. I read chapter 1.
Okay.
Chapter 1 is very nice. It's a great message. And you can skip over some of the dalliances in 2 and 3 and those other chapters, and really talk about, again, relationship and about Ruth's love and loyalty, to her mother-in-law, but Boaz and his loyalty and his love and his, his kindness. I talk about tzedakah. There's a lot of things we can talk about without getting into the depths that we explored today.
Okay.
Okay.
So what's next? What's next week?
What's next week? Something more PG. We gotta delve out of the R-rated, and I don't know. I have to look at my notes what we have next. But
science fiction.
But I think
Bill will be back for science fiction.
Yeah, I'll say this is that this is more of a general announcement. Torah study. We were thinking about sort of going through Shavuot, and then taking a little break for the summer. But with COVID going on, I think we're all around during the summer. No one's taking any big trips, I would imagine, and so we're probably going to continue Torah studies sort of through June at the minimum. So keep your eye out for that. I also wanted to mention for those of you who are signing off for the next class is that if you do have time tomorrow at 12 o'clock, you really don't want to miss it. We have a guest speaker tomorrow at 12, Rabbi Dr. Michael Marmer, who is a teacher of mine at HUC when I was in rabbinical school. He's now the provost of Hebrew Union College. Our synagogue is teaming up with two other synagogues, one in New York and one in Skokie, Illinois. And we are sponsoring this lecture that he's going to be giving tomorrow. So just our three congregations are invited to this lecture. And it's about the philosopher Abraham Joshua Heschel, the great rabbi and sage of the 20th century, and about what Rabbi Marmer thinks his response would be to COVID and to the challenges we're facing today. So he is just a phenomenal speaker. He lectures all over the world. He's brilliant, and he's just fascinating to listen to. So if you have the time tomorrow at noon, a link just went out today at 5:30. It went to your emails, and it has the Zoom link for tomorrow's lecture. So again, if you have time, if you have the wherewithal, I would really recommend doing it. It's an opportunity to study with somebody who we normally wouldn't get to study with. But unfortunately, for the rest of the world and ourselves, because of COVID, but fortunately for us, this makes him available via Zoom to do this. He's actually staying up late because he's in Jerusalem. So he's lecturing at 10 p.m. his time, whatever it is, 8 p.m. I think his time. So not too late, I guess. But yeah, just wanted to plug it, that it's going to be a really great learning opportunity. So tomorrow at 12 for him. And then, of course,
are you going to be recording that? Can we watch it as a podcast later on?
I know what, I didn't set up the Zoom link for that one, so I'll have to check with the one who did. But I'll certainly see if I can get that done, if we can record it.
Great.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi. Goodbye.
Thank you.
And we're going to dive into Israeli music for our second half today.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
One is, I forgot the first one, but the second one is, you did get the message about Jean Weitzman. Are you doing the funeral for her?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I'll see you on Thursday. I can't think what the funeral.
No, I got the message. It's just very sad and really just.
No, it's really horrible.
I've been talking to her son, and we're putting everything together.
Very nice man, her son. Yeah. And
That's,
daughter.
Thursday at 1.
Okay. And the other one is, how is Laura doing? Do you know? I meant to email her.
Yeah, I saw Laura today. We had a little socially distanced going away party for Rick. Rick is moving to Tennessee.
I heard he was moving.
And so Rick is moving, and so we had a little farewell socially distanced lunch today.
Yeah.
And so I saw Laura. She has 2 fractures.
Yeah.
And so she has one in her radius of one arm, so elbow area, and she has a damaged wrist on the other hand.
Yeah. Yeah, bless her.
And so her wrist was no great shakes to begin with, and now it's really not doing so great.
Yeah.
And she went to the orthopedist today, and there's hope that she won't need too much more done other than just she's in a sling, for the elbow, and sort of a wrist cast, not a cast, but a brace for now, and they're hoping that it's not going to need any more work than that.
I want to talk to her, and I haven't talked to her. So.
She'll be there on Thursday for the funeral.
Okay. Oh, she was. Okay.
Yeah, she'll be there.
Gary and I are coming.
Oh yeah. She's up to it, but she's planning on being there.
Okay.
Penny drove her today. So it's like it's hard to drive with a broken arm and a broken wrist in the other hand.
Yeah, I don't know how you do that.
So she has some mobility, but it's not. You can't fully straighten it. So not what you want.
And I was going to tell Marilyn, you're still there, right?
Yes.
That I heard from Rabbi Novak.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
He's got a 3-year gig. He's going to Palm Desert.
to where?
Going where?
Palm Desert in California.
Oh, okay.
Oh, wow. Didn't
Yeah.
he live there before?
He lived in California, somewhere around LA.
Yeah.
I think he was in LA earlier for rabbinical school.
Right, and lived out there for quite a while. So he's traveling soon, cross country, he said. They haven't figured it all out.
Yeah,
Thank you for telling us.
yeah,
Yeah,
thank you. His whole congregation. He finished up in Weston, Florida. I think he's actually all done there. And
He is. Friday was his last day.
Yeah, and he's in the process of moving out to the West Coast. So we're really happy for him. You know,
It turned out to be a very small world, as I said to him. Elsa and Joe Mikosh, who usually sit with me on Friday night, I mean, I talk to them regularly to make sure they're okay, and they're doing fine. But her sister and brother-in-law are members of that congregation. So I texted him that, and he just laughed. He just thought that was hysterical. So, but they're nice people. They'll have a good time.
Yeah.
There's nothing like Jewish geography.
Yeah,
really. Thanks for telling us that. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's nice to know that he's got a good place.
Yeah, no, it's very exciting for him. We're really happy. Hold on for 1 second.
Hi, Bonnie.
Karen, can you
I was going
hear
to say hi, Leah. Now you know who I am.
Right.
And now I know who you are.
Okay, good.
Karen,
Okay.
Karen, can you hear me, Debbie?
Yeah.
My next door neighbor met Rabbi Novak up at the Tanglewood music festivals in Massachusetts. So she knows him too. So it is a small world.
It is. It really is a small world. He thought that was pretty funny. We've been texting back and forth yesterday when I was talking to him. So he's doing fine. They're both fine. That was nice to know. I text him every now and then and hear from him.
Is he happy about that?
Oh, he's ecstatic. He's
And-
just thrilled.
Did you say he's taking a cross-country trip?
He's going to a new congregation in Palm Desert, which is right
No,
on.
you say he's going cross-country? You said he was.
Yeah, I said, last Friday was his last day at the synagogue in Weston, and they haven't moved yet, but they're working on it. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, it's very exciting, you know, that he found something. So I'm really happy for him.
Yeah.
He and I know each other from school, so it's like.
Yeah. So I was glad for him. I'm sorry?
Where's the rabbi? Where are you?
Where am I?
Yeah.
So the background's from a show called The Good Place. Highly recommend it.
I don't
Oh,
know
you
that.
mean it's a virtual background?
Yeah.
Oh, very cute.
Yeah, it's on. The first 3 seasons are on Netflix. Highly recommend it. Very funny. Okay, with all that said, we're going to jump into our next part of our course here, which is a continuation of last week's Yom Yerushalayim study. We're going to do the history of the history of Israel through music. So we got a lot of the old school stuff done last week, and now we're going to get some of the newer Israeli music. What I want to start off with is a song that is a pretty famous anthem. You might have heard it before, and you might recognize. I'm going to send you some of those. I'm going to send you the lyrics as well in a moment here in the chat function.
I'm going to call Gary real fast if he's got a problem.
He was here before.
I didn't see him on there.
Yeah, he was here during the earlier part of the class. I didn't see him, but I saw his thing popped up, and then I thought he was still here, but I guess not.
I don't see him.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'll see if I can get a hold of him.
Oh, please, yeah. So in the chat box function, you should see a link to songs.com, and that is going to be the lyrics song that we're about to hear. The song is called Lu Yehi. And I'm just going to mute, just that way we can hear the song. The song itself was written a lot earlier than this performance. We're going to get into that story in a minute. First, I want us to hear the song, and then we'll talk a little bit about what it means to Israel and about the journey that this song has taken. So this is going to be, I'm just going to raise my volume a little louder. Lu Yehi. which translates to if only, or as we're going to think about, let it be.
עוד יש מפרש לבן באופק, מול ענן שחור כבד, כל שנבקש. ואם בחלונות הערב, אור נרות החג רועד, כל שנבקש לא יהי. לו יהי, ענן לו יהי. כל שנבקש לו יהי, ענן לו יהי, כל שנבקש לו יהי. לקולות אני שומעת, כל שופר וכל תופים, כל שנבקש לו יהי. לא תשמע בתוך כל אלה, גם תפילה אחת מפי, כל שנבקש לו יהי. לו יהי, לו יהי, ענן לו יהי, כל שנבקש לו יהי. לו יהי, לו יהי, ענן לו יהי, כל שנבקש לו יהי.
Okay. Now, this song, again, for those who have heard it before, and for those who are familiar with the Beatles song "Let It Be," it comes from a very similar place and actually has sort of some rhythmic similarities to the song. And the message sort of being similar, it's anti-war, or sort of written in the shadow of 1973's, war. I was getting a message. After the Yom Kippur War. It's sort of an ode to peace, that eventually, we'll be together and there won't be any more fighting. And so if I pause over here to the English that I sent you, it's often translated as all we pray for. And, may it be, or let it be, please may it be, all that we seek, may it be. And that, it's going to be these sounds of peace, not these sounds of war. And that's like, it's going to be this tranquil environment without battle and without anger. It's going to be peaceful. It's going to be utopia. It's going to be very pretty, as opposed to all the violence that has taken place in Israel's history. That's where Lu Yehi comes from. Now, Lu Yehi, why I wanted to start with that today is that I'm using this song to bridge two worlds. This song was written, as I mentioned, in 1973 by Naomi Shemer, who we studied last week, with her most famous melody being Yerushalayim Shel Zahav, right? And this song was also sung by Chalva Alberstein, who sung the Leah Goldberg poem we read last week, Songs from My Beloved Homeland, one of the first songs we heard. Very Ashkenazic, right? Music, very Ashkenazic melody. You'll notice the person that was singing that song was not Ashkenazic. She was Mizrahi. She was Sephardic. She was from Middle East, not from Eastern Europe. This song has transcended the divide between Ashkenazic and Sephardic Judaism, and Ashkenazic and Mizrahi. That's what I'm going to be using here as well. The Eastern influence into Israel, Jews from Persia, Jews from Iraq, Jews from Yemen, Jews from Egypt, Jews from other parts in North Africa, Turkey, certainly Spain, going all the way back, but Jews of the Middle East, that weren't from Poland, Hungary, Russia, Lithuania, that came to Israel brought with them a different culture and a different musical style. When we think of Israel and we think of Israelis, right? And when we think, larger sense of Judaism, we're not one ethnic block. There are many different ethnicities that make up Judaism. Ashkenazic and Sephardic are the two big, divisions, so to speak, but there are many subdivisions within those movements. And of course, the great irony, anti-Semites don't care about, Ashkenazic versus Sephardic, Reform versus Orthodox, whatever it is, they just care if you're Jewish. But in Israel in particular, and here too, but in Israel in particular, there's always been some tension between Ashkenazic Jews and Mizrahi Jews, Sephardic Jews, because they have their own culture and their own sort of traditions, and there's occasional divisions. And one of the divisions that comes is through music. So when Sarit Hadad, sings Yehiyu, sings Alo Yehi, I should say, it creates a little bit of a tension for some Israelis, because it's suddenly associated with one kind of voice, the Ashkenazic voice, and here she is putting a little bit of a Sephardic spin on it. I don't know, by the way, if you could hear, through the Zoom, is that the crowd is singing with her. The crowd is, this is something that everyone has memorized. It's an anthem for Israel, this optimistic, peaceful anthem of Let It Be. So we're beginning today with crossing that bridge between the Ashkenazic world of music, which defined Israel for its first 30, maybe a little bit less, 25 years of existence, to all of a sudden this new music, which then is going to reflect the tension in Israel's society between Ashkenazic and Mizrahi Jews that are coming to Israel. So if we move forward, this is a fun one for us, should it work. This is an artist named Kobi Oshrat. He's going to sing a song that was, and again, it sounds funny to say, this was the anthem in a way. This was the theme of the IDF's 70th anniversary. So when the IDF had its big celebration, its 70th anniversary, this song was chosen as its anthem, as its theme for it. It's actually a satirical work. The title is Ein Lecha Ma Ledoeg, which literally means, what, me? Worry? What do I have to worry about? And it's a military anthem. It's a soldier's love letter, basically, home to his girlfriend and saying, what do I have to worry about? I have plenty of time to rest between bombardments, is basically how the song goes. Like, don't worry about me. I'm fine. I'm just dodging bullets here. So that is the nature of the song. It's a little bit cheeky, a little bit satirical, as one can imagine. I'm going to, again, shoot the lyrics over to you in the chat box. So you can have the lyrics in front of you. And we're going to hear a part of, of this song, and then we're going to move forward to the next one. But this is the first version of it, the Ashkenazi version of the song.
אין לך מה לדאוג, אני נזהר, ולובש גם סוודר. אין לך מה לדאוג, זה מיותר, הכל בסדר. אין לך מה לדאוג, כאן נהדר, מרגיזים כהוגן, באמת שלא חסר דבר. אין לך מה לדאוג, פה קייטנה, ועושים שמח, ואתמול היה אפילו פנאי להתקלח. אין לך מה לדאוג, אני ישן, וחולם עליי, שאחזור העיר.
You silly rabbit. Most people. Don't you love YouTube? Okay. That's okay. So that's the Ashkenazic version, of this melody. Now we're going to get, of course, an interruption from YouTube. But that's okay. That's the, you can see the beat, the rhythm of it. Now we're going to fast forward a little bit to the Sephardim get their say. The Mizrahi are going to take this song, which in many ways is a classic, so to speak, of the Ashkenazi movement, and they're going to transform it with a different melody, a different beat.
ברוכים הבאים לפלוגה. עד ההופעה אתם חלק מאיתנו. אתם אוכלים איתנו, ישנים איתנו, לוחמים לכל דבר. אין לך מה לדאוג, אני נזהר, ולובש גם סוודר. אין לך מה לדאוג, זה מיותר, הכל בסדר. אין לך מה לדאוג, הנהדר, מפגיזים כהוגן, באמת שלא חסר דבר. אין לך מה לדאוג, פה קייטנה, ועושים שמח, ואתמול היה אפילו בלי להתקלח. אין לך מה לדאוג, אני אשם.
Oh, YouTube, you silly rabbit.
I like your tattoos. What are those numbers on your arm?
Oh, that's the date my dad died. He was a fireman.
וחולם עלייך, כשאחזור העיר אני אתחתן. שלחי לי תחתונים וגופיות, כאן כולם כבר כמו חיות, נלחמים כמו אריות, מועד ממש גבוה, ואצלנו בפלוגה, מבקשים קצת הפוגה, מותק לא לשלוח לי עוגה. במקום בטוח, ובנוף גזר, הפצצה, יש זמן לנוח. ולך מרידות פגז מתוק, סבלנות ילדונת, באמת שאין סיבה לטוב. תחתונים וגופיות, כאן כולם כבר כמו חיות, נלחמים כמו אריות, מועל ממש גבוה, ואצלנו בפלוגה מבקשים קצת הפוגה, מותק לא לשלוח לי. שלחי לי תחתונים וגופיות, כאן כולם כבר כמו חיות, נלחמים כמו אריות, מועל ממש גבוה, ואצלנו בפלוגה מבקשים קצת הפוגה, מותק לא לשלוח לי אותה.
Okay. Unmute you guys. A little bit of a different sound. Than
That's the same song?
Same song, yeah. It's the same song.
I couldn't even recognize it.
Yeah, they have a sort of a similar melody, but like they funkify it a little bit with some traditional Mizrahi beats and rhythms, some voice modulations, some different ways that really mark it as a Sephardi song. So they're taking this very traditional Ashkenazic song about sort of the Ashkenazic military and their experience, but now even in the video, as you can see, it's a couple of years old, but it's, you know, they've transformed it into something Sephardic. They've transformed it into something, you know, the soldiers in the song, and a lot of they're a little bit darker, so to speak, a little more swarthy, as we say. It has a different look to it and a different feel. And so it's their response in a way, but it's also their way of saying, we're part of Israel too. You know, our story is the same story as the Ashkenazic Jews as well. We're all in this together. We're all part of that shared experience of being in Israel. Okay. So let me see. Gary, can you hear us? He's using the chat box, but he says his microphone isn't working. Can you hear the audio? Okay, so he can hear the audio, but he can't respond. Sorry about that, Gary. I don't know. It has you unmuted here, And so I'm not sure. I got the video also, so that's good. Okay. I'm glad for that. I'm sorry about the microphone issue. I don't think there's anything I can do about that on my end. I don't see it, but I'm glad you're with us. I'm glad you're here. So yeah, and so you're going to see that tension in some of these further songs. So we have this over here, this idea of the Sephardic transforming some of the Ashkenazic melodies as their own and really becoming part of the Israeli music culture, where they are now asserting themselves into popular Israeli music, where it was dominated by one style, and now it is being transformed, it's being changed as part of the story of Israel about the integration, right, and assimilation, and maybe one can even say the almost a recreation of what Israel is. Israel, throughout its history has gone through this several times. We're going to touch on it again towards the end with another immigration as well. But with the Sephardic Jewish experience coming in and playing more of a dominant role in Israeli society, it can only be impacted, obviously, in the music. It can only be reflected, I should say, obviously, in the music as well. Any questions so far? Okay, we're gonna pop on over. Actually, before we completely leave this song, you can look at the lyrics here if you didn't already. You have nothing to worry about. I'm careful and I wear a sweater too. You have nothing to worry about. It's pointless. Everything's okay. Nothing to worry about. It's wonderful here. Bombarding in decent amounts, but it's fine. I'm fine, whatever it is. Send me a little underwear and some undershirts, but it's got high morale. We're feeling really good about ourselves. Again, a little tongue in cheek. So yeah, it sort of has that tune to it. And there was even time to shower yesterday. And don't worry, I'm sleeping and dreaming of you, and we'll get married when I get back. I'm in a secure place between shelling and bombing. There's time to rest. Nothing to worry about. A little patience, and we'll get there. So yeah, obviously getting a little tongue in cheek, but sort of shows that humor that goes in a lot of Israeli melodies as well. That they're dealing with this situation is very hard, very stressful. Certainly all the fighting is very difficult. We saw some other melodies as well, but sometimes you have to find a way to be a little tongue in cheek with it. And this is one way they found to be a little tongue in cheek with this music. Okay. Now we're going to move on to an interesting character, Zohar Argov. And so this is, I'll give you a little bit of the background of this gentleman. So Zohar Argov was, for a while, considered to be, his nickname was Hamelech. He was the king. He was sort of compared to Elvis Presley in his way, in that he was very innovative. He's the father of the creator of, the king of sort of this Sephardic Mizrahi invasion, so to speak, in terms of the music. He is a controversial figure. I want to put that at this right from the forefront. Like many musicians that we can, I'm sure, think about and name, he had a very difficult character, and he was involved in many illicit things. He was accused of rape, actually, and so he had some issues in his story. He died very young. He actually hung himself in prison when he was once again arrested on a different charge. And so there's a lot of controversy with him, because of the way he lived. But his music has still become is still very popular there, and again, part of the fabric of Israeli society. That these are again some of the classic works of early Sephardic rock, early Sephardic music. And so I'm going to play you a little bit of this song. It's a romantic song. It's called "A Flower in My Garden." And this is like one of his earlier classic works, 1980, 81, I believe, is when the song came out. And so I'll also play you a little bit of this. to give you a sense, a little bit of that Sephardic melody, Sephardic rhythms that are going to become so popular in Israel. Okay. No, come on, you two. Okay, I don't want to overkill that one. Only because we have so much to get through. So this song over here, A Flower in My Garden. I remember you since clear and crisp spring day. I knew then I won't give up, for you are the apple of my eye, every night and every day. You are to me a heavenly angel in the mist. I wanted to ask for your hand. I wanted to tell you of the secret of our love that is guarded in my heart. I wanted to say to you, my love, I loved, but now it's over, for I did not dare, even when it was too late. You are my world at dawn, mine all day, etc., etc., etc. You are in my blood, in my spirit, in my heart. You are the sweet fragrance. You are the sweet fragrance, the flower in my garden. So again, a very sweet, romantic song. It's not a political song, right? It's not a Zionist song. It's not a song about optimism or other of the themes that we talked about before. This is a pop song, okay? This is just something. This is candy pop, sugar pop that we have nowadays too. Almost like teeny bopper stuff, but from my Sephardic experience. And it's something, where this is one of those songs that in the early 80s and even now, could be played, in a restaurant, could be played in a club, could be played in a discotheque, because of its resonance still today and what it symbolizes as really a foundational artist, troubled and controversial as he was, but a foundational artist in the creation of Israeli music culture, thanks to the integration of the Sephardic experience into the life of Israel as a whole. The next song, I was debating going back and forth, whether to include it, because it is part of Israel's story, and it is part of the Sephardic experience, though in a more modern way. Has anyone ever heard of Netta? Has anyone ever heard of Eurovision?
Mm-hmm.
So Eurovision is an international singing contest. It's 50 plus countries, and they, let me see here. Yeah, so Gary was mentioning that he noticed that some of it sounds very Greek in style. It's for him that has that Mediterranean beat, and Haddad sounds very much musically Greek. And he mentions a couple other artists here about the different origins. And he mentions he does remember Netta. Netta was Israel's entrant into Eurovision. She got that right by winning other contests sort of in Israel. They have their version of American Idol, right? And so she won, and she represented Israel in Eurovision, which has been taking place since 1956. Different countries have joined, again, mostly European as the name goes, but some in Asia. Australia just, became part of it. And Netta herself is, she was born in Israel, but she has like a Portuguese side, I believe. Her family's from one side, Sephardic Jewry, and one Ashkenazic. And so both of those elements are in her music. And the song itself combines a lot of modern rhythms as well. There was a time in Israel in 2018, it seems so long ago, but 2018, where you couldn't move in Israel without hearing this song, even though it was mostly in English. There's a Hebrew version as well, but mostly in English. But people would just go wild for this song. I don't know why. It's not that great of a song in my opinion. But that being said, people just gosh darn loved it. And it is part of it also was, and I'll note that this song also came around the time when the Me Too movement was really center stage, and all the stuff was coming out. And so the song is called Toy. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the, where is it? There it is. The lyrics, such that they are. Being a little hard on Netta, I guess, but the lyrics, such that they are, I'm going to send over. And we'll listen to as much of this as I can tolerate. So here we go. Let's find it, because she is here somewhere. There it is. This is live. This is, again, for a while, had its day in the sun. And she has remained very musically relevant in Israel past this. So she's not a one-hit wonder. She's still, doing other things, and very popular as a cultural icon in Israel right now.
Look at me, I'm a beautiful creature. I don't care about your modern time creature. Welcome boys, too much noise, I will teach ya. Pum pum po, pum pum po. I think you forgot how to play. My teddy bear's running away. They're back like the sun and say, hey, hey, hey. My someone's just leaving me alone. I'm taking my picture home. You're stupid just like your smile. Wonder Woman, don't you ever forget. You're divine and he's about to arrive. He's walking
Okay. So here, you hear a lot of sounds, to put it one way. She's what's called a looping artist as well. There are DJs who do this. They find a rhythm or a beat or whatever it is, and they use synthesizers and they loop things together. And so you hear a lot of repetition in it. And the sounds and almost the clucking that she does, it becomes very popular. And she makes a lot of, again, rhythm and sound and what's the word I'm looking for? Like acoustic, with her mouth, and she makes all these sounds that sound like other instruments and drums. It's definitely a not for everybody, this song. I think one of the reasons why it won Eurovision, was obviously her energy, her enthusiasm, and maybe it's the right song at the right time, because of its message of empowerment, and a female empowerment, I should say, in the Me Too time, that I think that really helped her carry the day. With her also being, again, to be fair to her, very innovative, even if it's not exactly my thing per se. Everyone has their moments, though. But this idea, Wonder Woman, don't you ever forget you're divine and he's about to regret, and I'm not your toy, you stupid boy. So that's the part of the song. That's the message. And again, it has it made a big headway in Israel for a long time, and she certainly has maintained a level of popularity within Israel, riding on this song. And also, again, she's still developing music and her style. She ain't going anywhere just yet. There's actually Hebrew. Ein ani lo buba means I am not a toy. Buba is Hebrew for a toy. So it has a little bit of Hebrew in there somewhere, right? We get there. But it also demonstrates, which we're going to get to in a moment again, about how different styles from different countries, forget the Sephardic, can come in. Because obviously, we have American artists doing very similar things with music and with recordings and looping and using those kinds of methods to create their own musical style as well. Now we're going to move off the Sephardic experience to the last 20 years or so, 25 years, when it comes to, we actually don't need that one. There's a band in Israel called Hadag Nachash. Hadag Nachash, literally translated, means snakefish. Dag is fish and Nachash is snake. It's actually seen as a word play. Hadag Nachash, if you change around some of the letters and vowels in it, it gets you to Nehag Chadash, which literally means new driver. The message of this band early on was that there's a new generation. There's a new band coming through, a new thought in Israel coming through that is sick and tired of the war, sick and tired of the fighting with the Palestinians, sick and tired of terrorism, sick and tired of all this violence, and they want a new path forward. So much like the 60s in the United States, gave birth to a lot of protest anthems, Hadag Nachash wrote a lot of music in a hip-hop style that spoke about the struggles in Israel for peace, for security, what day-to-day living was like for the average Israeli. This song is arguably, maybe not arguably, one of their most famous songs, if not the most famous song, Shirat HaSticker, the sticker song. So the sticker song was born from an author in Israel named David Grossman, who's a fantastic author and writer about Israel and Israel's history and the cultural, situation in Israel. He noticed after the assassination of Yitzhak Rabin that there was a lot of polarization in Israeli society. And one of the way Israelis would cope with the situation was doing something very American. They used a bumper sticker. So in Israel, you'd always see bumper stickers on cars expressing their political, their religious viewpoints, their social viewpoints, bumper stickers as far as the eye can see. So David Grossman created a list, basically, of all the stickers, bumpers that he saw. And Hadag Nachash used that, and they created a song. And so every lyric in this song is actually from a bumper sticker, or a bumper sticker that has been changed a little bit, for their song. So it all comes from, again, that idea of the bumper stickers and expressing what is the reality in Israel. What are we, as an Israeli society, doing right now? You'll see in the video almost every element you could think of Israeli society is represented. So they're going to be all costumed in different different get-ups, different outfits during this song. So you'll be able to get a sort of a glimpse to the eyes. So when you were going through this, keep an eye out for all the different characters. I'm going to ask you afterwards who you saw in the song represented. I'm going to send you the lyrics again. For this, we'll go over it a little bit afterwards. I recommend, certainly for everyone to give this a Google later to learn more about it. I've actually taught for like an hour and a half just on this song because there's so much to talk about in it. It's, again, very popular, very famous song in Israel. And so we'll go through the lyrics a little bit afterwards. I wanted to give it to you so you can take a look, to peruse. We're now going to give this a mute, and we're going to listen to Hadag Nachash, Shirat HaSticker. Oh, come on, YouTube. Yeah, we got it.
שלום, תנו לצה"ל לנצח, עם חזק עושה שלום, תנו לצה"ל לכסח, אין שלום עם ערבים, אל תיתנו להם רובים, קרבי זה הכי, הכי, גיוס לכולם, תור לכולם, שום ייאוש בעולם, יש הזה כאן, מלאך מנאומן, no fear, משיח בעיר, אין ערבים, אין פיגועים, בגץ, מסכן ילדים, העם עם הגולן, העם עם התוצר, חבר אתה חסר, הקדוש ברוך הוא, אנחנו בוחרים לך בחירה ישירה זרה, הקדוש ברוך הוא, אנחנו קנאים, לך ימותו הקנאים. כמה רוע, אפשר לבלוע, אבא תרחם, קוראים לי נחמן ואני מגמגם. כמה רוע, אפשר לבלוע, אבא תרחם, ברוך השם, אני נושם ולרחם. מדינת הלכה, הלכה המדינה, משמרת הרוויח, יחי המלך המשיח, יש לי ביטחון בשלום של שרון, חברון, מאז ולתמיד, ומי שלא נולד איתי, חברון אבות שלום, לא צריך כהנא צדק, ציין משקר, צריך מנהיג חזק, סגן על השלום, תודה על הביטחון, אין לנו ילדים למלחמות מיותרות, השמאל עוזר לערבים, זה טוב ליהודים, פושעי, פוסט-לרדים, אנחנו כאן, הם שם, אחים לא מבטירים, עקירת יישובים, מפלגת את העם, מוות לבוגרים, תנו לחיות לחיות, מוות לערכים, כמה רוע, אפשר לבלוע, אבא תרחם, קוראים לי נחמן ואני מגמגם, כמה רוע, אפשר לבלוע, אבא תרחם, ברוך השם, אני נושם ולרחם, כמה רוע, אפשר לבלוע, אבא תרחם, קוראים לי נחמן ואני מגמגם, כמה רוע, אפשר לבלוע, אבא תרחם, ברוך השם, אני נושם ולרחם. לחסל להרוג, לגרש, להכות, להדיר, להסדיר, עונש מוות נופיר, להשמיד, להכחיד, למגר, לבאר, הכל בגללך חבר.
You can see it picking up all the stickers. Okay. So who did you see there?
I want to know if they all were part of the Israeli army at one point.
I wonder. I
Did
think a
they
lot,
serve their time in the Israeli army?
I'm
Or were
sure.
they Dodge drafters?
You know, they draft dodgers. Yes, I'm guessing they served their time. I can look it up for you if you'd like, because you know, they all do. So it really is an important song for Israel, very culturally appropriate. They maintain their popularity past 20 plus years. You know, speaking of, actually they just re-released the song. You know, the latest version of it. And so if you look at the lyrics of the song, you know, you'll just see here a lot of cultural viewpoints expressed, and a lot of wordplay, which is obviously very, you know, very common in rap music. Dor shalem doresh shalom. So a whole generation demands peace. And then you go right from that one to new litzahal linatzech. Let the IDF win. Let them do what they need to do. You know, and so a strong nation then makes peace, contrasted with let the IDF basically kill everybody and let that be it. You know, there's no peace with the Arabs. You know, again, contrasting with other ideas here. But it's not only about that situation, obviously. You know, some of it's very religious. That, you know, no fear, Moshiach Be'ir. Don't be afraid. The Messiah is coming. It's an ultra-Orthodox bumper sticker. You know, the Supreme Court, you know, the question is, what do they do in Israel? Supreme Court endangers Jews, because that's a feeling that some of the people have, is that when the Supreme Court rules against the right wing and the religious parties, you know, they get upset and they put it a bumper sticker, you know, or we're united with the Golan. This test in Yarka actually refers to getting your car checked, getting your car's transmission and smog testing. You'd have to go to Yarka to get that done. So that was just, you know, a sticker that says you got your car inspected. Chaver atachaser is what Bill Clinton said about Rabin. He said, "Shalom, my friend," you know, and so you would see a lot of "Shalom Chaver" bumper stickers, and so Chaver atachaser is a play off what Bill Clinton said at Rabin's funeral. Direct elections are bad. You know, instead of voting for a candidate in Israel, they vote for parties, which led to 3 elections in this past cycle in Israel to get to an actual government. And then HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Holy One, blessed be He. We are zealots. We are jealous for you. Let the zealots die. You know, so there's a lot of just like balancing between different extremes here, and it's an example what they're trying to show is the polarization of Israeli society, that there are so many different people and so many different perspectives that make up Israel. It isn't just all one voice, and that they want to show it in the video with also the people portrayed in the video. So you saw the ultra-Orthodox rabbi and the Tel Aviv discotheque. You know, you saw the you know, Orthodox yeshiva student, and you saw you know, a scantily clad, you know, blonde woman who represents again that party life, partying lifestyle in Israel as well, for the younger generation. You saw Arabs there, you saw Ethiopian Jews, you saw a whole bunch of people there who represent different parts of Israeli society. And so this song tries to reflect that and the many different perspectives that exist in the land of Israel, saying that, look, you know, there's no one voice. We all have different opinions, different ideas. They're all part of Israel. But the chorus, I think, is important to look at, is that, and I think it's part of the point of the song, is that the polemics, the extremes, lead to problems. So in the Hebrew, again, the rhyme, kama roa, how much evil, efshar livloa, are we able to swallow? Okay, so how much evil can we tolerate? How much bad stuff can we tolerate before we have change? Abba terachem, another bumper sticker, but he's asking God, that God have mercy on us already. You know, we have to get out of this cycle. And then the joke, Korim li Nachman, call me Nachman, the ani megam game. Megam game is the Hebrew for stutter. You know, and so there's an earlier bumper sticker. If you've been to Israel, you'll often see this bumper sticker on walls. There's actually yarmulkes. It's a meditational chant. Na nach Nachman me'uman. And so that was actually a chant. It goes back to Rabbi Nachman. It was meditative. So they're making a joke about that and saying, my name is Nachman and I stutter because it's Nachman, you know. So he's saying he's Nachman and he has a speech impediment. And it goes back to, again, how much evil can we swallow? And then, thank God, right? Baruch Hashem, thank God, Ani Noshem. Baruch Hashem, Ani Noshem. Thank God, I'm breathing. And then on to the next, Lachen, on to the next thing, right? And so that is our translation of this song. Keeps going. That's a translation of this song. And again, very powerful message about the dangers of the polemical nature of Israelite society, how much we divide ourselves in this country, and we have to find a better way forward. Any questions?
Is Nachman a real person?
Yeah, Reb Nachman. Yeah, Reb Nachman of Bratslav.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, he's a real person, and again, a very esteemed figure in the Hasidic movement.
Okay.
But even also in the Reform movement and conservative Orthodox as well, because he had a lot of teachings about peace, about being at one with nature. He had a lot of really good, very important teachings about peace and mindfulness. And so that's why his name is sometimes used in a chant to create that meditative state. Okay. Oh, goodness. Now I'm really going to get modern times here. So this is now sort of modern Israeli music. This is the past couple of years, 2017, I think this is when this was put up, it says here. A song called Tudo Bom. Tudo Bom is not Hebrew. Tudo Bom is Portuguese. Tudo Bom is basically saying Kol Tov, everything is good. And so I wanted to play this for you to show the influence of, again, Spanish music, but also the influence of just American, European music in the 21st century. And what this looks like now. They have these groups of, of 2, 3, like almost like boy bands. But this is really a duo, Statik and Ben El Tavori, and they're produced by Jordi. And they have their own set of unique rhythm and styles. We're about to see a little unique rhythm and style. This is more party music. Once again, this song was on the top of the charts in Israel for at that time a record of 66 weeks, and then it was usurped by another one of their songs that lasted about 85 weeks on top of the charts. Tudo Bom. After commercials. Gotta have commercials. Okay. You see a very surreal image here.
Batida legal, עושים קרנבל, עפים לחלל, קרנבל פה, כמו בסאו פאולו, אז בואי תקשיבי לי ניניה, תפסיקי להיות לי קשסה, חריף איתך כמו קייפיריניה, קצ'יניה, את לוקה, בוא נסתום לכולם את הבוקה, אם חשבת שאני מברזיל, אז איך זה שאת כל הגוף צבע מוקה, יד אחת עם הכוס באוויר, לחיים סלוט, צ'ירס, זו העיר שכדאי להכיר, ואם כבר הכרתם תתחילו לשיר. אוי תל אביב כמה הכל יפה לך, לא סתם אומרים יגל שמח לבב וראש, היום חוגגים כמו בארצה בבלה, אצלנו אומרים שבסדר ואצלם אומרים שטודו טודו בום, היי טודו טודו בום, היי טודו טודו בום, כל בסדר, טודו בום, טודו בום, טודו בום, טודו בום. בטח הקצב גרם לך לבוא, שתגידי שלא, תני לי שנייה, תקן לך אותו. הגוף שלם בדביק בתוקתה, יהיה פה אסון. היא לא מצרפת, אז תגידי לי, את איך אכלת לי את הקורסון. ההבדל בינך לכל היתר, בלילות את חוגגת בסתר, תל אביב ישראל ומעבר, טודו פה, הכל בסדר. אוי תל אביב כמה הכל יפה לך, לא סתם אומרים
Okay. Very modern. The dress obviously is very different, very modern style, certainly extreme style, in terms of their wardrobe and their appearance. Static and Benel, they have been doing this for a few years. And you can see in this song in particular, the influence of Sephardic rhythms, right? So we're seeing that little merger of the Sephardic style. Here they even use a lot of Portuguese and Spanish, in the song. You might have picked up on some of those words. And they're also expressing optimism, right? Tudu bum, it's all going to be good. Things might be crazy out there, but now we're going to have a fun. We're going to have a party. We're going to do it like it's Carnival. In Rio, we're going to do a carnival. We're going to have fun. And we're going to dance, and we're going to sing all this violence, all these people with guns. We're going to transform them into people in a discotheque. And so they're going to be dancing instead.
This is the Wiggles grown up.
The Wiggles grown, maybe so. Oh my goodness. Yeah, it's very colorful, very, flamboyant, to say the least. But yeah, it's like the Wiggles grown up. One of the most popular artists in Israel for the past couple of years, it might surprise you, is not Jewish. He's actually Christian. He was born in Israel, but his parents were from the country of Togo, which is in Africa. And so Stéphane Lagar, his first language is actually French, which is where you have the song title here, Comme ci, comme ça. But he speaks 5-6 languages, whatever it is, including Hebrew, but French, Hebrew, English, Spanish. He speaks, a couple other languages. So Stéphane Lagar from Garçon. So he is. This song was again everywhere in Israel for a while, and for those who have more French than I do, comme ci, comme ça means right? It's fine. It's not too great. It's not too bad. It is what it is. I think it's sort of maybe a good. Yeah. Go ahead.
Chetzi, so.
Yeah, Chetzi, thank you. Chetzi, so, exactly right. And so this is his version of Chetzi, half, comme ci, comme ça. And so the Stéphane Lagar is everywhere now in Israel. And the reason why I like playing his music for a class like this is that it shows you, here's somebody who does not have the typical look of what we think of maybe an Israeli, or someone who might not think of a look or a sound that is intrinsically Jewish or Israeli in any kind of way. And so here he is, this Christian kid from Africa, not from Israel, but his parents were emigrated from Togo. I think they worked for the Nigerian consulate, has become all the rage in every Tel Aviv discotheque, with this song, and his dance moves have become very popularized in Israel as well. So this is really one of his breakout songs called Comme ci, comme ça. And so I'm just going to give it a little bit of a mute, and we're going to hit it. After Holy Guacamole.
Public service announcement. It's not okay to squeeze me. Forget this tough skin.
Eat good to the avocados.
Move easy, folks.
Holy guacamole.
Nah, make your own.
Stéphane Lecard, let's get it. Israël est magnifique, mais un peu problématique. Chez nous, on disait m'inspique, comme si comme ça c'est attique. Par exemple, sur Tel Aviv, y'a tout de tout sans déconner. Mais c'est toujours pas parfait. Attends, je vais tout expliquer. Hey, Catine en Richard. Vacances au ski sur le Vermont. Les mademoiselles en Israël, là, oulala, oulala. Avalani Moussim, comme si, comme ça, comme si, comme si, comme ça, comme si, comme ça, comme si, comme si, comme ça, comme si, comme ça, comme si, comme si, comme ça, comme si, comme ça, comme si, comme ça. Oh, les gens stressés, ça travaille toujours, sont tous occupés, mais débordent partout. C'est parti et tous se salient, même les avocats ici sont endormis. Je marche dans la rue, tout le monde est différent. Les gens qui s'expliquent comme des petits enfants. Ils font tout ça, mais même pas le temps. La totale chicha à Paris. À faire cannibal, Rachid. Les mademoiselles en Israël. Oulala, oulala, oulala. Comme si, comme ça, comme si, comme ça, comme ça. Comme si, comme ça, comme si, comme ça, comme ça. Comme si, comme ça, comme si, comme ça, comme ça. Comme si, comme ça, comme si, comme ça. Tout le monde à gauche, à droite. J'ai dit à gauche, maintenant à droite. Let's get it. La politique, comme si, comme ça. La panasta, comme si, comme ça. Les filles sont mortes, comme si, comme ça. Alcool, comme si, comme ça. Éducation, comme si, comme ça. Formation, comme si, comme ça. La précision, comme si, comme ça. Comme si, comme ça.
So, we've come a long way from early 1940s music with Stéphane Lagarde. Is that his message here in French and in Hebrew, so it's subtitled in Hebrew because he's speaking French as well as Hebrew during the song. He is talking about how everything in Israel is right now. You know, politics, the news, education, it's all fine. You know, it's not great. It's not terrible either. You know, everything is sort of right now in Israel, according to this song, this melody. And it struck a chord, obviously, no pun intended, maybe it was intended, with Israeli society. And they really just got into it, and it became a whole dance craze and a whole music craze. And he is a very sought after now collaborator with other Israeli musicians right now. But certainly I get a different look. And you know, it's interesting because we think about this music and it's all very secular. Obviously, it's secular political, secular fun, secular social commentary. But I didn't want you to think that I would leave out the religious people from this discussion. So I think everyone touched upon how religious music has changed in Israel. So with that said, this one usually blows people's minds, but I think it's fun. I'm not going to hear the whole thing. I know it's getting a little late. I want to be respectful of the time. We started a little late, but it's getting to that hour. So here is it's a very interesting song called Hashem Melech. God is King.
What
Right after
if
this commercial.
one hot-selling Amazon product could replace your income and change your life?
Oh, come on now.
This is the world made over. Mashiach will come take over. You ain't gotta be me or see what I see. All you gotta do is take a look forward. Lift up your eye to the sky. Spread out your hands. Say thank you, smile. Get them up, put them up, leave them up. Ha ha. Yeah, pump up the value every day. Stand in place. Heart racing, no words to say. Pressure building, trying to hold my face. Mind twisting like not today. Wake up from everything. Break out your shit and scream. Ha, Shim, you're the king. Ha, Shim, you're the king. Hashem Melech, Hashem Malach, Hashem Imloch leolam va'ed. Hashem Melech, Hashem Malach, Hashem Imloch. Hashem Melech, Hashem Malach, Hashem Imloch leolam va'ed. Hashem Melech, Hashem Malach, Hashem Imloch leolam va'ed. I feel the cold in the rain. I wanna get up and leave. I wanna get up. Everything's always the same. I wanna get up and leave. Now standing here and the night's so clear, like the shine upon your crown. The world is yours, you forfeit it to whomever calls you. Hashem,
What does that mean, Hashem Allah?
So during Saturday morning services, during a Torah service, we have a song, Ein Kamocha and Av Harachamim, and this is actually taken from the liturgy. Instead of Hashem, it's Adonai. Adonai Melech, Adonai Malach, Adonai Yimloch Leolam Vaed, Adonai Ozamo
You just read this, Debbie.
You know, I'm not a cantor, so it
Oh,
helps.
that was in Thursday's class? Oh.
Yeah.
I'll have to check my book. Okay.
It's right from the liturgy. So it means Adonai reigns, has reigned, and will reign forever and ever. And so they took this very traditional piece of Hebrew liturgy and they transformed it into a song about devotion to God. Gad Elbaz is Israeli. He was born and raised in Israel as an Orthodox Jew. Nisim, the African gentleman there, African American, he was born in Seattle. He converted to Judaism in 2013, something like that, a little earlier. Converted to Judaism in a Sephardic Orthodox synagogue, made Aliyah, and is there with his wife and kids, and now he does this for a living in terms of his music. So he and Gad Elbaz created an Orthodox rap song that is popular within Orthodox communities, less in the discotheque than other things. But it just shows that this music and the way music develops can impact, like where else but Israel would you hear a collaboration or a sort of a rap song between an African-American convert to Judaism and a born and raised Sephardic Israeli Orthodox, creating this kind of song. It's Israel in a nutshell in a lot of ways because it's so culturally diverse, of a song. And again, creating a religious song, but using secular modality, particularly again rap music, to express something very sincere and very prayerful. So I just thought that was a really cool song to include. I wanted to end, on one final note. Again, no pun intended. Hatikva, right? It's sort of where we started with the Israeli national anthem. Hatikva literally means the hope, right? The hope that's expressed that we would have our own land and be a free people in the land of Israel. But Hatikva has been repurposed in this last song, at least the title, to create a different melody. The two gentlemen singing, Subliminal and The Shadow, they are two Israeli hip hop artists. They both, on the political spectrum, are on the right side of the equation, so to speak. They are more right, hardliners in the right wing. And they created this sort of nationalist anthem. So I wanted to sort of conclude with that because I'd like to conclude with Hatikva, to show how that song has obviously remained, that melody has remained very powerful in Israel, that optimistic thought that we started with, right? And so this is a song that talks about struggle, but still maintaining hope. It's a live version of it. I have memory, so there might be a little bit of language in this, but it's all in Hebrew, but you'll see probably some transliteration. So forgive me for that one, but I thought it would be a nice way to end. And here you can say, even in the pause, Anachnu rotzeh memashehu optimisti. We wanted something optimistic to end on. They're gonna do this concert, and it's gonna end with their version of Hatikva. And then after this, we will sort of wrap up and say our goodbyes for the night. But here we go with. Hold on. There we go. We're gonna end with Hatikva. Ah.
ראיתי כמה הם הלכו, יותר מדי מהם לא חזרו. חברים נפרדו, בתים נשברו, דמעות של משפחות נשלחו. ניצנים של אנשים דרכים שלא יפרחו. התקווה בראשינו, אהבה בנפשנו, החלום ברוחנו, אז לאט נמשיך בדרכנו. מה להדממה של קולות המלחמה, עוד חייל חוזר עטוף במוות דגל המדינה. דם וטיפה נשפכים באדמה, עוד אימא המומה נשארה לה התמונה. התקווה בלב נועל, עם חזק לא נתקפל, כי לא נולד הבן זונה שיעצור את ישראל. תן לי את התקווה לקבל מה שאין, את הכוח לשנות מה שכן. הבטחתם יונה, ברקיע יש עין, אחי סיבה נעים לו קצה לא עלה של זית. חיים בחלום, כולם מדברים על שלום, אבל יורים נוקטים עוד לסופים את ההדק. בעולם של פיגועים, אנשים תמימים מדברים חיים באשליית הצדק, הם מרחיבים בעם הצדק. עובר טירוף יומיומי כדי לשרוד, לא רוצה לחיות כדי להילחם, צריך נלחם כדי לחיות, נוטע תקווה, משאיר שורשים, מגן אותי על החלום שלא יתנפץ לרסיסים. די מספיק עם הכאב, מספיק עם הדרמה, שנה שהאדמה מדממת, לא למה ולמה. תן לי את התקווה לקבל מה שאין, את האומץ לנסות לתקן.
What a nice way, I think, to end with Tikkun Olam, right? So, like this song, to me, it's a really nice summation of the past 2 weeks of study. HaTikva, you know, the hope, the Israeli sort of national anthem that expressed optimism about the land. They use that word tikva and transform it into a hope of living in a world where there's no longer violence and there's no longer pain. So even in a song like this, that is obviously it's hip hop, you know, this is 2003. So for those of us who remember, this is actually sort of tailing down at the end of the second intifada. So that's what they're referring to here. There's blood and guts and gore everywhere. People are dying. There's suicide bombings everywhere in Israel during this time. And they're sick of it. They're done. They're tired of living in this world. So they are feeling hopeful that things can change, and they are hopeful in their strength. You know, as they say very early in the song, that the so-and-so has not been created that can, you know, destroy Israel, that they are willing to fight and bleed for the land, but they're tired of fighting and bleeding for the land. They want to live in peace. And it's a song of resolve, a song of persistence, of perseverance. You even heard, you know, that the serenity prayer, right, in there. You know, God, give me the, you know, the patience, whatever it was, to accept the things that I can't change, and the koach and the strength to fix what I can. You know, and God, give me the strength to go out there and fix the world. And so, you know, within this song, you hear those references to our liturgy. You hear the references to the HaTikva, the anthem, and there's a smattering in there of, you know, of Lu Yehi, of, you know, of let it be, you know, let's create a peaceful world, and all these other sort of paeans, these songs about peace and love, about Yehi Tov, Tudu Bam, you know, things will be better, things will be good eventually. Maybe not right now, but through perseverance and strength and fortitude and holding on to our hope that things will get better for us in Israel. So that's what I wanted to conclude on, the message of hope and of optimism. I hope you enjoyed this little journey through Israeli music and how it, you know, how society impacts music and music impacts society.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
That's my pleasure. I'm happy. If you want to, if anyone's interested in sending an email, I can sort of send you a list of some of the songs that we covered, and maybe some ideas for future sort of music. It's really, again, I think, interesting, because when we think, again, Jewish music, we sometimes think of prayer music and liturgy, but here it's all this Hebrew being used to create, again, beautiful, meaningful, diverse music that tells a story. So, so I hope you enjoyed the story.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. We'll be back. We're back next week, I think. I guess the calendar. But yeah, we'll definitely be back next week for class. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so,
you.
so
Good night,
much.
everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.
Good night. Thank
Bye.
you.
Good night. Good night.